Without a shadow of a doubt, it's the Crumpet Show in social media history. I want to welcome you to another episode of the War Zone. I got my good friend Donovan Sadiq, the Queen, Demetri K, and I am the 5-star general. Say, man, you might have to go to civil court. And if you go to civil court, you need to be dealing with a judge that got some common sense. Well, tonight we got one. My good friend Nile Copeland. He's running for Judge 127 Civil District Court. We're going to talk about some things tonight. Y'all get a seatbelt. It's going to be good. Say, man, I want to welcome you to the War Zone, and I want to thank you for tuning in, because without you guys, we would not have a show. You are the best audience in the world. There's no doubt about that. And as I normally say every night, happy, whatever that may mean. But, you know, it is what it is. Now, you sitting there and you wonder, man, what the man got on his head? This is my tactical helmet. Because every day I wake up and I got to go to war for somebody. I woke up this morning and I had to go to war for Spencer Falwell. Y'all know the story of Spencer, wife and daughter sick. And this morning we had a meeting with Pastor Isaac Matthews. Spence was very, very emotional. He couldn't sit through the whole meeting, but I did. As his representative, I sat through that meeting. And there's some good things that's going to happen from that meeting. And the thing I want to say is thank the pastor for taking the time out to sit down. And one of the biggest things that's going to happen when they roll it out, they're going to do a GoFundMe, a worldwide GoFundMe, to raise money for both those ladies to take care of those hospital bills. So, you know, that is a blessing. There's some other things. I don't want to talk about them right now. But what I do want to talk about is you going to the voting polls. Well, now I'm gonna do my ballot by mail. Over in Gregg County, Texas, 3 arrests, 134 indictments for voter fraud. You better think about it. And Houston, you next. Donovan, what's going on, man?
You know, again, welcome to the War Zone, the greatest conversation on the internet. I want to thank Judge Nile Copeland for coming out here, because we need a lot of legislative knowledge. A lot of people don't really understand how being on the bench works and the different jurisdictions of the judicial activism that goes on there. But I wanted to tell everybody today, the President of the United States is going for the win. The black agenda is out. Haven't heard nothing from the Democrats. He called Joe Biden out, straight out, went toe to toe, said, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, this, and this. It's all in black and white. You can go to my page. I'm sure Demetri put it up, and several pages, and you can see it on the news revamp. But this is what we're talking about. I'm voting my interest in my pocketbook, and even the president realizes every vote counts, and he's not going to take the black vote for granted.
Demetri?
Yeah, I was just actually gonna say exactly what Donovan said. I actually listened to a lot of it before I did my show, Donovan and I show earlier. And he did. He called Biden to the carpet. He said stuff like, Joe is staying in again. You know, he's not coming out. You know, I guess he doesn't have the energy, you know, to go out and things like that. And he also said that people are comparing their records, saying that Trump has done more for black people in his 47 months than Biden has done in 47 years. He also said instead of Joe Biden demanding the black vote, he should be begging for forgiveness for the things that he's done to black people. And so I just, you know, my jaw dropped a couple of times, because as Donovan said, he did, you know, put forth a black agenda, and he really did call Joe Biden to the carpet, saying, hey, these are the things that you've done that I've actually had to go and fix. I'd have to undo some of the things you did in your 1994 crime bill with Bill Clinton. And so, I thought that was very interesting, to say the least.
Well, you know, Trump going for the gold right now, man. And I mean, when you looking at spending 500 billion in the black community, I mean, I ain't heard Joe come up with no numbers like that. So, you know, I mean, teach his own. But as a reminder, in case folk get it confused, you already know what it is. So, you know, our people don't play no games. Y'all chasing the stimulus, we chasing the bag. That's how I go. But let's just say it was election day, right? You're going into the voting booth and you're confused. I don't know if I'm gonna vote for Biden or Trump. Well, what you have to do is you have to down ballot. If you don't want to vote the presidential election, you have to down ballot. So when you down ballot, now you're talking about state and local and stuff like that. That directly affects you every single day. And I put out a judicial slate, I think maybe a month and a half ago. And, you know, I endorsed Nile Copeland for Judge 127 Civil District Court, not because he's a Republican or a Democrat, but because he's a good person. And we need good people in these positions. We need patient people on the benches. We need knowledgeable people on the benches. So, you know, after sitting down and talking to my man, I mean, it made sense to me, you know, and I want to welcome you to the show, my friend. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing very good. Thank you guys for having me tonight.
No problem. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about your background and your history?
All right. Well, I've been practicing law for over 18 years. I'm originally from Louisiana, come here for law school, and got a little culture shock by being in Houston, and also finding out that the food is not as good when it comes to Cajun food in Houston, but we can adapt. But I've been practicing law for 18 years. I've done a lot of different deals. I do a lot more real estate, a lot of contractual work, arbitration, mediation. I've been a municipal judge for 9 years. I resigned last year, so the year my mom passed, because she had actually was able to see me become a judge. And I wasn't going to be in politics anymore, but I got a phone call from a dear friend. He started calling me every week, asking me to run. I kept telling him no. I joked and I said I felt like I was the guy in Ferris Bueller's Day Off that was sitting in the car saying that he's going to keep calling me and calling me. And so finally I sat down, looked into it, looked at the candidates. And that's one of the things that a lot of people, they don't do is when they run, sometimes they don't look who they're going to run against. And they make the job a little bit harder for themselves. I didn't have any animosity against my opponent. We didn't have anything negative. He called me on the phone when he found out I was running against him, and I told him, I'm not running a negative campaign. You do your own campaign. I'm going to talk about myself. I'm going to talk about what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about Nile. I said, if you want to talk about me, feel free. I said, I'm not worried about you. I'm worried about me. And one of the things I do is I'm active in the community. I'm active in Freemasonry. I was a Shriner's patient. I later became a Shriner to help out with the children. I get involved in everything that I can. I've been, people would be surprised that I've actually trained poll watchers and poll workers. I was a Democrat candidate starting in 2010, and I was active in the Democrat politics for a very long time. And that's why when I'm running, I know how to run a ground campaign. I know how to block walk. I know how to knock on doors, and not everybody does that. I take a true grassroots approach. When I started running, I told myself I'm not going to pay a filing fee. I'm gonna collect 1,000 signatures and do that myself. If I can't promise myself I can do that, I don't have any purpose of running on a ballot if I can't do the work. And that's what we should expect of our judges. People that'll come in the morning, they'll put in the time, they'll be listening to what's going on, be respectful to everybody, be fair. That's the most important thing, is to have a judge that's going to listen and be fair and actually try to get things done. That's a little bit about me.
I tell you what, you made a point. You say you Democrat up in 2010, and I was a Democrat up until this year. Everybody know my story about why I switched parties. What made you switch parties?
So being involved in politics, and I think we were talking a few minutes ago, you see a lot of the issues about, let's say voter fraud and all these issues that come up. So when I got involved in 2008, I got involved in a lawsuit where everybody was saying issues about voter fraud. But around before I was really switching parties, I look back and I realized that out of all the talk and all the rhetoric that people put out about voter fraud and all these lawsuits that come about, nothing is changing. It's the same thing, the same issues. You still have people talking about mail-in ballot harvesting places and things like that. Nothing's changing. And for you to think in Houston, one of the biggest cities, and you have this problem that makes us look like we're Mayberry, USA. It's sad, and people aren't doing anything to fix the problem. They know it's there, and they try to maximize the benefit from it. And I'm not that kind of person. I don't want to be a part of it. And there's a lot of elected officials that are tired of seeing it, and a lot of them know what's going on, and they just don't want to be anywhere near the places that's occurring.
Donovan?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me ask you a question in regards to, for some people who came on late. You're running for civil district court. What exactly does that court oversee, or what's their jurisdiction?
So it's interesting in Harris County. We have a lot of different courts, a lot of different numbers. The 127th, the 333rd. The way Harris County works is because everything is centralized in downtown. All the numbers really, all they indicate is the sequential number that the court was created. So my court that I'm running for was the 127th District Court that was created in Texas. Now all of the courts, at least in Harris County, they cover the entire county. And so if you file a lawsuit, it gets filed in downtown, and they randomly assign it to one of the courts. Now the civil courts, they're handling issues from anything that's not criminal and not family. So you have contract disputes, personal injury cases, anything that's dealing with businesses, medical malpractice, any of the issues like that. And that's the jurisdiction that they're kind of overseeing.
Demetri?
So, hello again. Welcome to the War Zone. And so I see that you have loads of experience in everything. You've been in 4-H, you've been in Boy Scouts, you've been a mediator, among a whole host of other things. You've got 18 years in the legal game, for what I understand. And I saw that you were comparing your statement to that of your opponent, Sandhill. Yeah. I think his name is Sandhill. And his, maybe a line or two, but yours is, about 3 paragraphs or so. But at the end of your statement, you talked about experience, being important, but what's more important is future experience. So define future experience, and how would that matter in regards to you being a judge for the 127th Civil District Court?
So what I think is important is, let's say my opponent's position, he's been on the bench for 12 years. In his, when they asked about his experiences and stuff, he's talking about what he's doing now or what he's involved with now. I would have liked to have seen, in my 12 years, I've done X, Y, Z, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, and a list of what he's been involved with, as opposed to, if you look at let's say in my case, I would be looking at how do I improve the court. One of the things we talked about was, a lot of people said, isn't it great that we use Zoom now for the court hearings? It is great that we use Zoom, but my comment at I think it was a Houston Lawyers Association, it was a Zoom conference, and I said the disappointing thing is that it took the courts in Harris County to be in the middle of a pandemic before they listened to what the attorneys have been asking for over a decade. We've been asking for some type of video conference call to make it easier on some people who can't be in the courtroom, who can't come down there. Maybe there's health issues. Maybe they can't be around a lot of people. Who knows? Whatever the reason is, we've been asking for that change to occur. And it didn't happen right when the pandemic started. They waited till maybe just a couple months ago when they started implementing these hearings. And one of the comments that I made is, it's great that we're using Zoom, but it's like a fax machine. You don't want a court to embrace the fax machine and then 30, 40 years later still use a fax machine. Even the fax machines today, they're not machines anymore. They're an email because no one wants to let go of that concept. So we have some guy that's programming a phone number into an email, and that becomes your fax. And so I said Zoom is good, but eventually there's going to be another technology out there that's going to be replacing it. And we need to be on top of that and actually embracing that technology. And we need to be having conversations with the bar and having the attorneys that come before the court talk to us and say, hey, this is good. I've used this in my practice. Can the court look at this and implement this? And the court needs to be, they need to be dynamic. And that's what I wanted to see from someone on the bench, is to saying that in 12 years, we've done the following changes. And one of the things, and it's a hot point that I'm not completely on board with when I first heard it, and I'd love to hear your guys' thought about it, is my opponent put into place a policy that if someone has a child, or if you're the husband of someone who has a child, that you get an automatic continuance in the court. It's great that you do it from that standpoint. However, the first thing that came to mind was this. I'm representing the defendant, and I have to go and explain to the defendant that this guy who has a law firm of 10 people has one person, his wife just had a child, he didn't have a child, and the court's going to automatically grant a 90-day extension on this case. So we have to sit back and wait until, this happens. Other people can cover hearings for you. But in this case, you have to explain to someone that your life is on hold for the next 90 days because they had something that was great in their lives, but you're going to suffer for 90 more days. Maybe your medical bills are still going to be accruing interest and stuff. So I had a big problem with that. I'm not a fan of it because I see there's an old quote that we've heard about, and we all know it, is justice delayed is justice denied. And to have that back in our history and then do something that actually contradicts what we fight so hard for, it's things like that. The court needs to take all of your life experiences and say, we need to make the courts better. We need to see, why are you having a problem coming to court? Why is it a negative opinion to be there? Let's make this better, because it's all we're trying to do is resolve the conflicts that are out there and get people to move on with their lives.
So I also see too in your definition, you say you're a farmer and a gentleman. I think that's very interesting. What type of stuff do you farm?
It's mostly small scale. My grandfather and uncles have been, just small country farmers. So just the standard, small crops, tomatoes, cucumbers and stuff. Nothing major. But I always like the fact that it kind of puts me back in touch, to my grandfathers, and it kind of makes me feel more at home to kind of be out there.
Now, this audience is predominantly African American. It's a diverse audience, but the majority is African American.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, when they see a candidate, no matter what its affiliation is, African American, we tend to want to run to the African American candidate. Well, what would you say to the voting public who's watching right now? As African Americans, why should they vote for you?
For me. So I think the first thing to start is coming from Louisiana. We come from, every state's diverse. That's the whole thing. It's our communities are diverse, and we want to be going in that comfort zone and saying, okay, I'm gonna vote for this countryman. Let's say like if they're Indian or whatever, Japanese, Chinese, I want to vote for someone that I'm more familiar with. But the problem we have with judicial candidates is you don't have them everywhere. You can't listen to them, talk to them, find out about their backgrounds. A lot of, and I've seen this in many groups. Like you'll have, let's say, 5 judges will go to a meet and greet someplace and go into the community, Pleasantville or anywhere in Houston, and they want to only converse with other attorneys, other judges that are there. They don't want to breach out into the community. In my case, I've walked and talked to people all through Houston. I've been out to, Griggs. I've been out to Sunnyside. Granted, I was out training poll workers for the Democratic Party and telling people how to treat people fairly. I had a lot of Freemasons. I went to one. I don't know if you know this place. It was a boxing hall, Prince's Gym. I went there to train a few folks, and everybody that walked into that training happened to be a Freemason. It was the weirdest thing. It was great. It's beautiful. I just kept seeing the same, rings and stuff, and I thought, what's going on? And we had a good time. We got active in the community. They actually wound up doing a T-shirt called "Square the Vote," and it was interesting. One lady came up and they said, "You can't wear that shirt in here," and the guy who was the precinct judge, I think it was off of Griggs Road, he came out and he said, "I know this organization. It's an apolitical community building organization," and he said they can wear that shirt wherever they want. And later he came out and he apologized that he hasn't been active in his Freemason Lodge for many years, and seeing us out there was going to make him go back and start getting involved in his community again. So I think that's what you're looking at. You want someone that's going to be active in the community and thinking about building the community, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to be a judge, and after I'm a judge, I'm not going to worry about you guys anymore. Because how many times do you see people come out, they get your vote, and they don't want any part of anybody until the next election? And that's a sad thing about politics.
Donovan?
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Judge, real quick. I know, everybody's been asking for this question. Child support. When are we going to get rid? No, I'm joking. We're going to go with the with the atmosphere going on in the United States in regards to these mass shootings and stuff. I mean, the police department, and and I know you're in the civil district court, but you're still, you're still a judge. You have a lot of experience as a lawyer and things. What is your opinion on some of this? And I'm going to call it a phenomenon, because it's just something that is just happening right now, and it seems like every time a Black person is shot down, that we wait for justice, and then justice doesn't prevail. And an example, because you're a judge, I'm going to ask you this one. In the Breonna Taylor case, nobody was charged in regards to her death. It was the apartment across the way and all those other things. Just what's your opinion on that particular case, just as an outsider, not as a judge, just as an outsider, but you are a lawyer?
Okay. Well, I guess this is the sad thing that we're looking at, is you're seeing there's a lot of instances where, I guess we always know, we've talked about this before, in all walks of life, medical doctors, dentists, lawyers, the police, firemen. There's the great people that do phenomenal work, and they're kind of applauded in their communities. And then there's the 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 people that you your jaw drops when you see something that they've done. But what's kind of sad is the people that work with them aren't surprised, because they know this person wasn't the best person on the force. And then it makes it more complicated, because however things happen, you have to, this is the problem that we run into, especially on a lot of these cases, is from a lawyer's perspective, when we see something like this happen, that the person gets arrested and they're trying to sort out what's going on. There's a lot of other factors that are coming in. You have to find out that, was the warrant good? Were they acting, was at the right location? Because a lot of the police, and I'm not sure it's the best thing to think of it this way. But most times when the police are going to serve a warrant, and let's say they go to your house, and unless it's the right house, they bust in your door to break the door, and they're chasing somebody. Everything that happens, everything gets broken. They have like protection under sovereign immunity, and it's one of those things that we don't feel comfortable with, to think that someone can come in and bust into your house, and when that happens, oh, sorry, we were doing our job, and so we're not going to do anything to repair that. And it goes even further, the fact that in that particular case, that they were having that shootout at that point, and then someone else gets hurt. In Texas, we have, a lot of people carrying concealed handguns all over the place. But one of the things that all the instructors will tell you is that when you pull a trigger on a gun, you're responsible from the moment it leaves your gun to wherever it goes. It could go down the street a mile away, kill somebody. You're responsible for that. But in the police situation, they're not always responsible for that. And so these cities are struggling with their immunity issues. They can't lock down a case, and if they're a bad seed, and that's what comes back when they do get released, or if people don't get charged, because they have their own investigation, and according to their rules, it's okay. It's tragic, but we've seen a lot of cases where people have sued the government, horrible cases, and they have immunity, and there's nothing that there's no relief. But the sad thing about it is that then it comes back to us. Look at our communities. Do we feel safer? Do you feel safer that there's could be somebody on the local police force that has a short fuse? I'll tell you one brief story. I was talking with one guy who had got arrested, and he even told me that when the police officer when they were asking him questions, there was a young police officer who was behind the older police officer. And when the guy started talking too much, the young guy put his finger up to his lip to tell him to be quiet, because he had already known that this guy has a short fuse, and he was warning the civilian, don't push this too far. And he stepped back, and he was kind of giving him an alert. And I think when we have situations like that, you got to go and you got to clean out your force. You got to take people who have had some bad experiences and become jaded on the force. You have to move them into another position, maybe a desk job, because you have to keep people who are tied back to the community.
So staying with that same line of questioning, we also know with the Breonna Taylor case, her family was paid out $12 million. And I guess normally that's a civil matter. And so I guess if the city council doesn't agree to the settlement, maybe the case will go to a civil court. Are those some of the cases that you would have to make a decision on? And how do you feel about cities paying out so much money due to police brutality cases?
No, those are cases that could come before the court, and unfortunately, it kind of gets to like a line that judges or judicial candidates can't cross, because if there's a chance that it may be something that we rule on, let's say whether or not how the judge would feel about money that's being paid out by a city, we're kind of barred on answering questions that direction. Sorry about that.
All right, Rontrell Bradford has a question, because we interact with the audience. If a victim receives a civil settlement before charges are delivered in the criminal courts, doesn't that admit guilt?
It can, but you have to look at it from this perspective. If you're in a criminal setting and you get a verdict from a criminal, say they find someone guilty, then that burden is higher. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. If you then go into a civil court, let's say someone is convicted, I take that case and then I go to a civil court. Let's say like the OJ case, he had a conviction criminally. You go into the civil case. That's an easier case now, because they've already proven In a civil case, you just have to prove 51%, or more likely than not that whatever happened happened. And so if you do have a settlement, generally the evidence regarding a settlement doesn't come into evidence in another setting, because they want to encourage businesses, encourage entities to settle. And so usually they don't want to admit evidence regarding settlement conversations.
Donovan?
Hey, great. I mean, everything is going good. So, yeah, you said that you go out and you actually go and do some, you ran campaigns before, you go knock on some doors and stuff like that. Houston is a huge city, and I know strategically you know how to do it. But, with the pandemic that's been going on, how has that affected your campaign and, and how you would normally run a campaign?
Well, first, Houston is huge. There is no candidate that I know of that can cover Houston. It's impossible. There's just way too many voters, too many square feet. You can do the best job that you can with what you have, with what funds that you have, with what volunteers you have, and hope for the best. There were during the pandemic, you switched to a lot more social media. You try to get on great shows that have a lot of viewers, like this show, and have good conversations. But it hurts people across the board because you don't have that interaction as much. There's been a lot of organizations that have canceled their meetings, a lot of events that have canceled that you lose that contact. But it's happened. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon. It's happened to everybody across the board in Houston. So Democrats and Republicans. It's hard. But then you kind of look around and you're looking for what other folks are doing. As we're getting out in the community and we're talking to going to more events, you still have to come back and kind of gauge that with your, I guess, your counterparts. And this year, strangely enough, they're not doing a lot in Harris County for the Democratic Party, and no one understands why. They're not putting out signs. They're not really making an effort in the communities, and I don't know if they are overly confident or if they decide to hold their money until the next election. I'm not sure what's going on.
Mr. Mitchell?
So I also noticed that you've run to I guess to be a judge, whether it was, I think it was appellate court judge and a judge in another district in 2012 and 2016. That weren't successful. So what are you doing differently now in order to actually be successful in 2020? Differently, rather. What are you doing differently?
Differently. I think it's when you first start running, you kind of get caught up on what a lot of political consultants tell you to do. Go out and go get some yard signs. Go out and get some flyers and do mailings and stuff and go that route. So you're spending more money, but there's no way to gauge what's going on. Getting involved with, let's say, for example, this show, just talking with you guys is huge, because not is it just a show on the internet, but it's a lot of people that have active commentary, right? Looking at the comments coming across. This isn't where people aren't watching and they're not engaging. They are engaging, and you're seeing that more and more. So that's one of the big aspects. But the other aspect is really getting out and talking to people and engaging with them, and not trying to I guess do like that fast sell where I'm gonna go talk to 100, 500 people today, maybe 10 seconds, and give them a card and run off. It's actually taking the time to listen to them, talk to them, because a meaningful reaction with anybody is going to actually have them engage with their friends and talk about you as a candidate. And I think that's where we kind of left off in the previous years, is you forget the fact that we all talk to our friends. I talked to this guy yesterday, and he was a great guy, and I think you should vote for him. And having that is invaluable.
Well, I tell you what, I'm gonna ask the question that Al asked. I mean, I'm a lifelong Houston resident. What do you think the city should finally do with the Astrodome? Now, me, I think it should be the world's biggest homeless shelter or the world's biggest casino. What you think they should do with the dome? Because if they're not gonna fix it, they need to just tear it down.
I can't figure out why they're holding on to it. I mean, we would normally think they would get it turned down, but I think it has a good structure. There's so many uses, and I cannot figure out why there's been so many proposals, for it to be used. And our local government, and I think we've talked about local government. Your local elections have consequences. Why don't they want to use that? Is someone not getting enough money to do a development? There's so much potential. Like you said, homeless shelter, right? Anything, and for it to be just kind of just sitting there, you might as well just, if they're not going to do anything with it, tear it down. It has no purpose at that point. But if there is a use that can be used, absolutely. Stop kind of just putting it on the shelf and not touching it. But there's been other developers that have wanted to come in and wanted to use their money to develop it, and they've turned them down. So I think it's the citizens need to have a voice in what's going on to it. It's we can't allow politicians to basically basically avoid issues that are important to the community.
Well, I think that was a great answer because I think if we could turn it into the world's biggest casino, then we could stop letting that casino money go to Oklahoma and Louisiana, and it could be here. I don't understand it. I mean, we already had a lotto.
Yeah.
We're taking our money at the convenience store for the lotto. Why not just make gambling legalized in the state of Texas? It's a lot of things. What are your opinions? And which I'm gonna ride this thing. What are your opinions about the bullet train, the new bullet train?
I don't know. I would like to see a bullet train. Where we could, have a benefit out of it. Since we really our traffic's bad as it is, but being able to travel instead of fly, I like the idea of it. I don't know what it's going to cost us as, I guess, members of the community, because there will be some cost that's going to be passed back to us, whether indirectly or directly. But I think one of the things that we miss is we don't have a lot of transportation, as other cities. That's why Houston's one of the biggest, or Harris County is one of the biggest areas for DWIs. We don't have that built-in mass transit system, and I think anything that we can do to add to it. It's kind of disappointing to see how slow the trains are developing. There's a use of it. I mean, it's worked out much better in other cities, and would love to see it actually expand more.
Dom?
Yeah, I love watching the different judge shows and stuff like that. And I actually served on a jury in a civil or whatever, criminal case, whatever. It was very, very interesting. Like I said, I'm a big what was that show Andy Griffith was on? Matlock. I'm a big Matlock guy. Yeah, and on this show, we always tell people how important. I think one of the three branches that is super important out of all three branches of government is the judicial side of it. RGB recently passed. Everybody's freaking out because a lot of the decisions that you guys make is becomes case law. Based on if it goes through whatever the deal is. So without going into like super duper detail, could you tell us like one of the craziest cases that you kind of had to deal with? Because when I was in the court case, the one thing the judge always said to the litigants was somebody's walking out of here unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about what he said, and I said, wow, that's a true statement. And it's somebody's gonna send them to arbitration. They don't want to go to arbitration and all that other stuff. So in your career, you know, I know you've seen a lot. Could you just give us an idea of the stuff that you're going to have to, you would deal with as a judge?
Well, I'll tell you kind of an interesting thing that I've told people is being a judge, a good judge is not in the business of making friends, because the people who you rule against, they're not going to like you. And the people that you rule for, they're not going to like you either, because you may not rule fast enough for them, and you may not give them what they wanted, or at least give them everything that they wanted. And so it's not always a fun business. But I will tell you one time when I was on the municipal bench that I felt kind of proud of what I was doing. I had a young man come up, and we get into a system in a municipal court, and that's what's interesting is the courts, the civil courts, when they have their dockets, they go through them pretty slowly. And if any of you guys been in court, they'll come in, they'll take their time. Everything's kind of very slow-mo. You flip to the municipal courts, and at times we were going through 500 cases a night. There were busy nights, but we were managing our dockets incredibly well. And I remember going through my docket, there was a young man comes up. I'm looking at the computer. I'm not even looking up. I'm just kind of looking down. I'm like, okay, so your fines are around $2,000, and it gets quiet. And I look up, and he's standing in front of the bench. His eyes are red. He's bawling because he just never realized how serious this was. And I look up, and there's maybe 100 people in the room. And I thought, man, if I was in that position, I would not want to have to be, turned around and go to sit down. And so I sat there on the bench, and I said, okay, we're going to go through your tickets one by one. And we stepped through it, and I said, can you get a driver's license? And he said, yes. I said, okay, you come back to the court with a driver's license. We're going to dismiss it for $10. I said, so that just saved you a couple $100. I said, now let's go to your next one and your next one. When we got down to everything, and I even told him at times, I said, when I ask you to come back to this court, I'm asking you not for you to tell me I can get this done in 30 days. I'm saying realistically, life happens, things get in the way. So you telling me 30 days is just one answer. But what I want is a real answer. Is it going to take you 30 days, or is it really going to take you 60 or 90 days? If it's going to take you 90 days, let's set it for that date, because I want you to come back and get it done. Because while I'm being nice from the bench, the next judge that hears this case and sees you before him is only going to look at the fact that you told the previous judge you're coming back in 30 days and you didn't do what he said. So we're going to create a buffer, because we don't want that to have a problem. And so after that, he said, I looked up, he was fine. I told him, I said, take a few deep breaths, and then I had him go sit down. And from that, I thought to myself, I was like, that's what you want from a judge. You want someone who's going to realize that you're having a bad day. And it's not about making your life worse. It's in processing you as fast as possible. But it's for someone to stop and take a moment and kind of work with you and kind of work through your problems with you, and give you a goal and some hope that this is not the end of the world.
So why do you think so many judges lack compassion? Because when I heard you tell the story, I heard a story of compassion. Most of the time when people go to court, I don't care if it's, for a ticket or you're suing somebody being sued, most people are scared to death. They are afraid of the whole process, and especially the judge. So in your opinion, why do you think a lot of judges lack compassion?
Within the legal community, we have a term that's called black robe disease. And what that means is there are some people that, one, they don't have let me back up. One of the most important things for any judge, everybody who runs for judge, they're qualified. They have 4 years of practice behind them. Everyone can legally be, qualified for being a judge. The most important thing is to have judicial temperament. And so that goes back to what we said, the black robe disease. Some people, when they put on a robe, they now become the most important person in the world, no matter who they are. And anything that you do or say can easily offend them. And for example, I've seen judges that if someone came into the court with open-toed shoes, they would reset their case. It's not about the way you dress. It's not about, because some people will say the way that you dress is disrespectful to the court. I've sat down with judges and I said, what if the way that you tell that person to wear the best thing that they would wear on Sunday for church, what if that's what they wear to church? That is their best clothes. You can't judge someone for something like that. And I think the problem is judges, you have good ones, you have bad ones, but then the ones that are bad ones, they're not as, I guess, they don't know their community. They went to law school. They go to, let's say, their private schools or whatever schools they go to, and they don't actually have anything that grounds them within the community. They kind of stay sheltered. So if you look at, you've heard on the news where they talk about the 1%ers or what have you. If you have a judge that lives in a very posh neighborhood, who never steps out of that neighborhood, doesn't know what it is to get their hands dirty. If they see somebody, let's say like in their case, let's say their gardener comes out and he's pulling something that's heavy, they're not going to go out and help them, at that same thing, because you have to think most people need to look at it from, we're all people. And I think we're all equal in all our stations in life. And that's what you don't have from the judiciary a lot of times. You have people who want to sit back and create that distance and say, I'm the judge, you're just a civilian, I don't want to talk to you. And I think you have a lot of them on the bench like that. They don't want to talk to the community. They don't want to kind of break down and say, hey, I've been there. I know what it's like. In my case, I know what it's like to be poor. I was poor when I was a kid. It didn't make me a bad person. In fact, I think it made me appreciate everything that I gain in life. And it also makes me focus on being kind to others and helping other people when times are hard.
Well, I tell you what, man, we sitting down, we're talking with Nile Copeland, elected, man, Judge 127 Civil District Court in Harris County. So we're going to touch the forbidden subject. We're going to touch the forbidden subject because everybody getting a hot seat, we give it to them. Reparations. Should there be some form of reparations for African Americans? What's your opinion?
I don't think I have enough knowledge yet. In fact, I was talking to Thaddeus just the other day, and there was a book that he had on his, because I'm real big on looking at people's bookshelves and seeing what they're reading, and I had been meaning. He told me there was a book that talked about reparations and how people would calculate reparations, and I think it's fair to say that it's a subject that I need to know more about it before I can make a decision. But to hear him talk passionately about that book, I realized that I've never heard of it, and I'm big on reading and learning, and I feel that that's just something I need to know more about. But I apologize. I still feel like I'm a novice on that subject.
Well, I tell you what, I'm gonna give you a subject you might know something about. Should the country free the weed? Should we legalize marijuana?
Interesting response. Question. So the way that judges have to look at it is we have to say that we follow the law in the state that we're in. Okay. So in Texas, it's not, growing it and selling it and everything is not there. The district attorney, Ogg, she was doing lighter sentences, for drug cases. And that's totally within their purview. I consulted with a lot of friends or a lot of clients who are actually getting into starting businesses, growing in other states where it is legal. And so I think when you look at it per state, I think you are going to see changes over the next 5-10 years where more and more states are going to be adopting the rules. The hard part to understand is even though you have legalization where they're growing it and they're testing it and selling it, um, there's still law out there that adds complications. For example, there's a lot of banks that those businesses can't bank with, because if they do, it actually subjects all of their clients to a violation, and it could shut down the bank. And so a lot of businesses may not be using banks as much as they want to. So I think eventually we're going to get to that point, because I think we're stepping away from it being a criminal enterprise, and it's currently, I think, everybody listening to this show right now probably at one point has thought of this. It's not a criminal enterprise. It's now a business. And here's the kind of the shocker to think about it is, we were talking about this the other day, and someone said, if and when it's legalized in Texas for recreational use, that all the licenses that would come up in let's say Texas, they're already spoken for, because there's already been back deals that you won't get a license, because your legislatures have already carved out these deals, because they know it's coming, and it's a matter of time. And so think of it from, let's say, our perspective. When we said, hey, I want to start a business, I want to get that license, you can't. It's that door's already closed. That opportunity's closed on us. And so as we see it going that direction, it's inevitable.
Well, I tell you what, you can notice the background where Donovan has this background where I love Third Ward. You don't need a license if you're selling it out the trap house. So when they legalize it, they're going to be selling it out the trap house anyway.
Yeah.
Donovan?
Yes, absolutely. I think everybody's been waiting for this question. I mean, who do you got for the NBA Finals and football? Dallas Cowboys. Are you a Texan? You're originally from Louisiana, so I was born in Louisiana myself. But so who do you got?
So for me, there's only two real football teams, and I'm gonna lose some votes here. I know it. There's only two football teams. It's LSU football, and it's New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints all the way. And even though I live in Houston, I am a diehard Saints fan.
There you go.
Dimitri?
So we're getting toward the end here. And so other than future experience, what is the number one reason, other than that, why people should vote for you opposed to the incumbent?
So I think the number one reason is, by voting for me, you're getting someone who's going to be on the bench and is going to be fair. Who's going to be focused on doing a good job. I believe in being accountable, but hands down, the one thing that I want of every judge that I go before is to know that when I walk in the door, he can be a hard judge, he can be a serious judge, but the one question is this guy fair? I don't care anything else about it, but is he fair? And I think that's, in my case, that's what you get when you walk in the door.
Well, this is going to be my final question, and then we'll go to final thoughts. Man, it's so many questions I could ask you. How do you think that the city officials did with handling the pandemic in the city of Houston and Harris County?
I have mixed opinions on it. And the reason why, well, I know, I take it back. I believe that a lot of us who are more concerned about our health, we took the precautions, hand sanitizer, washing your hands, and you wear a mask. Forcing businesses to do that, I think, hurt a lot of people, closed a lot of businesses, because you still see businesses struggling. A lot of them are closed permanently because they were operating on a very thin margin of basically paying their bills or going bankrupt. And I think the worst thing that they did is when they started allowing the courts to engage in foreclosure proceedings again before the businesses were operating at 100%. That was the most serious thing, because you started seeing people, businesses that were being locked out of their business. There's nothing they can do because they're at 50%. They can't make their bills. They can't make their payments. And then you start seeing them having to close their doors, and there's no resolution for them. There's nothing they can do. Their hands are tied. They have to close down. So I think that was one of the, I guess, bad things that come out of it. I think for the most part, well, the other bad thing is the fact that the numbers were skewed and the numbers were misrepresented. And we all thought that was the case. But when the real numbers from the CDC started coming out, and they did say that they were over exaggerating it, it really builds a sense of mistrust with the media, mistrust with the government. And I think that's what we have to get past. We have to, the courts, the elected officials that are there or may be coming in November, they have to be accountable, and they have to actually give us actual true numbers and not throw numbers out there just for news purposes to drum up, fear within the community.
Final thoughts, Mr. Donovan?
Well, again, I want to thank you, Judge Copeland, for coming on the show. I mean, it's been a pleasure, but I'm going to end it with this. I live out here in California, and we got a lot of fires. A lot of foreclosures are coming down the pipe, and I'm just going to advise a lot of the listeners and viewers. Since and if I go into foreclosure, I would want a judge like Mr. Copeland, who's going to have a little compassion, is going to give me a little time to work on my issue and with my banker or whatever, because this stuff is real. A lot of people are, I mean, the courts are coming in and they're just closing doors and they just don't care. And we need more compassionate judges that are not just going to go by the law, because they have to do that, but they're going to look at the real situation. So if I can vote for you, Judge Copeland, you would have my vote, but I'm in California. But I'm strongly going to recommend everybody out there, from what I'm hearing, this is a guy who legislates and adjudicates from his heart. And that's the kind of judge I would want to be in front of, to tell him, hey, here's my situation. Here's, what can we do? Can you help me?
Final thoughts, Demetri.
Yeah, I second what Donovan said. And once again, Mr. Copeland, thank you so much for coming on here. But, you guys know how I feel about voting on the national level as far as the presidential race. I could take it or leave it, but I do definitely think it is highly important that we vote on the state and local levels, because that's what affects us more closely, as close to home. And to Donovan's point, you want a judge that's sitting on the bench that is going to be fair. As I said earlier, a lot of people go to court and they're afraid because they've had bad experiences in court for whatever reason. And so you want to be assured that even if you don't win, you had somebody who was really interested in hearing your side of the story. And so when you go into that booth, be informed. You have it here, right, from Mr. Copeland, that he is going to be fair. And I agree with Donovan. If I could, I'm in Southern California as well. But if I could, I would give you my vote. So, you always want to vote your better interest.
Well, I feel bad for my two co-hosts. They're in California. I'm in Harris County, so I already know who I'm casting my vote for. Nile Copeland, Judge, 127 Civil District Court. It's a no-brainer for me. I've been in those courtrooms with the judges that have zero compassion. And like I said, man, and I keep telling y'all this. When you go into the voting booth, that's your business. You don't have to tell nobody what you do. But you tell me, and I hear the rigmarole from the black candidates, from the black judges, and well, Nile is a white guy. He's a Republican, but who cares? Get rid of the Republican and the Democrat and go in there and push that button for Nile Copeland. Because if you end up in that courtroom, he's going to be fair. And that's what you want from a judge. I tell y'all what, it's been a spirited week. It's been a spirited week. We've had some great conversations. And we're going to come right back Monday and start it all over again. Come Monday, I'm pushing hard from a political standpoint, pushing out the people that I support. But all the other races, I'm coming with my slate. And if you've not done the work, you will not get the endorsement from the war zone. It will not happen. It's not personal. It's just business. I don't want to hear what you gonna do. I want to see what you've already done. So that's how you get my vote. I thank you, my friend, for taking the time out to come in here and hang out with what I say every night, the two intelligent black people and the crazy black Republican. So, y'all wondering what's going on with the helmet? Say, man, this is my tactical helmet. And I love it. And I'm gonna be wearing this all over the country. And hold on, my battery about to die. So you might want to go out there and get you a tactical helmet because right now we're in the middle of a war, and we're in the middle of a war for a lot of different reasons. So I appreciate everything that you've done in your career. I look forward to you campaigning, and don't be a stranger. Come back again before the elections, because you know why I like doing this for candidates, Demetri and Donovan? When I was a candidate for school board, the one thing that irked me the most was I would go to a forum and they would give me 2 minutes to speak. Who gonna learn that I'm intelligent in 2 minutes when y'all done put me all over the news, got these people thinking I'm crazy? So I want to challenge the listeners. Get in the inbox of your favorite candidate and tell them to come to the war zone. I know they ducking us because they know we got them tough questions, but we're very, very professional. And we just want to expose you to the people so they can get to know you. They can get to know you. This is not a fluff program. We don't script this. We just come straight off the muscle. Got a little Nick Cannon in us when we do that though. But it is what it is. And as I said, I appreciate my friends hanging out with me every single night, doing what they do. And they can't vote for you, but you already got my vote, and I ain't scared to see. And that's what I say, man. So, man, I want to thank y'all for tuning in this week. And remember, October 20th, the hottest radio morning show in the country. Gonna pop off. We're gonna bring you on there too now. Warzone Radio, Monday through Friday with the 5-star general and Rodney Bigham is gonna be off the chain. I want to thank my co-host, Donovan Sadiq, the Queen, Demetri K. Our guest tonight, Nile Copeland, Judge 127th Civil District Court. Don't get in my inbox and ask me who to vote for. I'm telling you, you need to vote for him. Let's get him to where he needs to be on that bench so he can go do the work. Until Monday, I holla.